Praise the Lord. Make sure everyone is my voice is a little gone, but as we were worshiping, I wish that my entire message could be just cut out and just continue worshiping, but I don't know how many of you guys have the Bible app on your phone, but usually like every morning around this time, they usually kind of, send a verse. And what's crazy is that during worship, I just had this thought in my brain, but I didn't know how to express it or say it, and so I just kept it in me. And then I saw this verse, and it just so clearly depicted what I was thinking. And it comes from Ephesians 2, verse 8 through 9. Before we get into the word, I just want to read that. It says, God saved you by his grace when you believed, and you can't take credit for this. It's a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can really boast about it. And it's really true. When we were worshiping and when we sang this last song, I just felt like there's so many of us here that there's this threshold between this freedom and then living in darkness. And this threshold, in our human brains, when we think about the grace of God and we think about how good he is, we think that we're not worthy enough to just cross this threshold and to live in his freedom. But I'm telling you guys today, if you feel that bondage, that bondage that Satan has set on you, there is literally nothing that is stopping you from receiving that freedom, and there's nothing that's stopping you from receiving that light. And so this is not something, it says, it's not by the good things that we have done. So even if we've never done anything good in our lives, there is still nothing that can stop us from receiving that grace and that freedom. And so if you, during worship, felt like, you know what, maybe this freedom is not for me, I'm telling you today, it is for you. And Jesus died on the cross for that freedom. And so live in that freedom, because when you live in that freedom, there's no say in the power that we have to us. There's no say in how much of the Spirit that he can just instill in us. So with that tangent, I was really shocked when I was told to say the message, because I just feel like usually this kind of meetings, there's usually a very formal pastor or very much older person, but I'm literally 18 years old, in college. I don't really know too much, but when I was praying, I was kind of God, I really hope that you give me a really easy subject to talk about, so that I can have all the details already laid out in front of me. But I was reading the story of Hannah, and this very minor detail, I think it was 6 words, this detail is 6 words long, and that detail really got to me, and I started questioning so many things, and I was like, I need answers for this, this, and this, and this, and God somehow just kind of came in, and he gave me all these answers. And so I just want to share that with you. We're going to be looking at 2 different stories today, actually. First, we're going to be looking at Exodus chapter 7, verses 3 through 5. And I'll just read that because we're kind of a little short on time. It says, I will make Pharaoh's heart hard and multiply my signs and my wonders, my miracles, in the land of Egypt. But Pharaoh will not listen to you, and I shall lay my hand on Egypt and bring out my hosts, like a defensive army, tribe by tribe. My people, the children of Israel, out of the land of Egypt, by great acts of judgment, the plagues. The Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel out of them. In the NIV translation, it says, the first part, I'm just going to read the first part, it says, but I will harden Pharaoh's heart. And those words are the ones that really got to me. I will harden Pharaoh's heart. God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Okay, keep that in mind. Now we're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 6. And I kind of like the NIV translation better. I did another one, but I kind of like the NIV better. And it says, because the Lord had closed Hannah's womb, her rival kept provoking her in order to irritate her. The other translation says, and her rival used to provoke her grievously to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. Once again, the Lord had closed her womb. Those 2 phrases, the fact that the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and the fact that the Lord closed Hannah's womb, those are the ones that really got to me. And I started really questioning, why did God have to harden Pharaoh's heart? Why couldn't the people of Israel just be let out? And then Hannah had come to the worst point in her life. She had no children, and the Lord had closed her womb. And I was like, God, why would you close her womb? Why would you make her go through all of that? And so first, we're going to kind of look at this story in Exodus. So I'm sure that all of you know the story. of the plagues, and basically the Lord just told Moses what to say to Pharaoh when he went before him to ask if he can let the Israelites go. And so Moses hears this. Moses hears all of this, right? He knows the fact that the Lord has hardened Pharaoh's heart. And then we come to the story of Hannah, and she's at the worst position, as I just said. She's unable to have children, so her husband Elkanah has to go and get a second wife, Peninnah, and have children there. And even though he loved Hannah so much, even like in the verse it says, he gave Hannah a double portion because he loved her. And so, Elkanah loved Hannah with all his heart, but Hannah still could not have children. And then the fact that the Lord had closed her womb, that really surprised me. So I found myself looking at these verses and thinking, like, man, why did this have to happen? Why did God have to put them through such hard things, And I started thinking about the faithfulness of God, and I started thinking about, how he's carried Hannah after that, and how he carried the Israelites after that. And then the Lord was just telling me, you learn the importance of God's faithfulness when he himself closes doors that would make you forget him. He closes, he has the power, he has the authority to go into your life and close some doors because he thinks that could be a threat to you and his relationship. And that was just really important. If there was no plagues, if Hannah had conceived the first time, would their surrenderance to God be the same? Would they see the faithfulness of God and think, you know what, in that situation, that was God. That was not my power, that was not my doing, that was God. And so, if you look at Hannah, you think, okay, if she had received Samuel, right when she asked, would she have still given him up for the presence of God? Would she have still said, you know what, Lord, you can take him? And the truth is, I don't think so. Because if you look at it, if you look at a human perspective, I guess if you look at it biblically, you can be like, oh, the Lord will change Hannah's heart and Pharaoh's heart and, make all things right again. But if you look at Hannah, Hannah was a human. And giving up your child is not an easy task. And so she gets this child, and I don't think it would have been easy for her to just give him to the Lord as she had said she would do. And sometimes, there is an easy way out of these situations. Pharaoh could have easily let them go. Hannah could have gotten the child. That's the easy way out. But we need to realize that when we get into these situations where the easy way out seems so much simpler and so much faster, you need to realize that if we took those easy ways, it's not always the most fruitful way. It's not always the way that's going to produce the most fruit for your faith. And sometimes we need to take those ways where we're going to get bumps and bruises, we're going to get problems, but it's not because we can walk out and say that we're any more stronger or any more better, but it's so that we can look at ourselves in this situation and we can empty ourselves of everything, of our strength, of our abilities, and fill ourselves and have God fill us with his spirit and his power. And I'm all for prayer. I love prayer. But the thing is, when we're in these hard situations, the number one thing that we pray for is, God, give me a solution, give me an answer. And sometimes we don't always pray, God, give me the grace for any situation, for any problem, for anything. Even if I don't ever get the answer, even if I don't get the miracle, I need your grace to walk through that. And the truth is, the devil knows exactly what would solve our problems. Just as much as God knows, the devil knows what would solve our problems. But what the devil does not know, or at least can't grasp, is the fact that we are able, as children of God, we are able to walk away from any situation, any problem, any battle, not because we had the right answers or because of our abilities, but because of the fact that the devil has one thing that he can never take away from us, and that is the grace of God. That is something that he will never understand, that he will never perceive, because that is something that the Lord has so freely given to us that he will never be able to take away. And, it's the same grace that Paul had received when he was in such great pain. The only thing the Lord said to him was, my grace is sufficient for you, and my power is made perfect in your weakness. When we get to where Moses and Hannah were, when we get to the pit of the bottomless pit that we thought was there, in that moment, that's when his grace is made perfect. That's when his grace is made perfect to the point where he's able to work all those wonders in our lives. The Israelites' work continued. If you read all of Exodus, it's just like one of my favorite books of the Bible is Exodus. If you keep reading, you can see, the Lord performed so many miracles in front of them. He split seas in front of them. He provided food and water when they were in need. He did so much for them. And yes, the journey to the promised land was hard, and we saw this, they had to go through all of this, it was hard. But I think it was worth every single bit of it, because it wasn't their ability that filled them up. It wasn't any of what they did, it was what the Lord did. And the Lord was filling them up, and it made it all worth it. They experienced grace in a way where I don't think it has been ever perceived before in the Bible. And for Hannah, she was emptied of everything inside of her. Not only was she physically barren, but her spirit felt the same weakness. She felt weak in her spirit as well. And she was tired of constantly getting mocked by Peninnah for not having children. And when she had come to the last ounce of her energy and the last bit, after she had poured herself out to everything, she came to the feet of God, and she had this heart that was so vulnerable and that was so open to what the Lord had to give her. So I know that we don't have too much time in front of us, so I'm just going to go through these 2 points that I thought were just really important from these 2 lessons. And number 1 is to just trust the process. Moses was told by the Lord that I will harden the hearts of Pharaoh, and it was not something that came upon him suddenly or as a process that he didn't know about. And it was the reason that happened is because it was a preparation for what the Lord was about to do later in their journey. And then in the same verse later on it says, the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand on Egypt and bring out the children of Israel among them. So from this we know that there is a reason to this madness and chaos, and there's a reason. It's so that the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that the Israelites could see that it was true the Lord that had delivered them. It's not the heart of the Pharaoh that decided to suddenly be nice to them. It's not anything like that. It was so that the Israelites could see that, God was the one that delivered us from that situation. And some lessons in our life have to be learned by doors being closed and answers being extra hidden. And that's just how it is, because when doors are closed and answers are hidden, we come to that stopping point. And in that stopping point, we turn to our Lord, because He's the only one that has every other solution that we can ever look for. And I'm sure, all of us have had problems in our life, and if you're a student, you've had exams and quizzes. I know I definitely have, where you walk out and you think that you didn't study enough or anything, but then you walk out with a good grade, or you walk out with a better promotion than you thought, or like a better anything than you thought would happen, and you walk out and you think, man, that was really God that worked in it. That was really His working that really happened. And that's the mentality that God wanted the Israelites to have. He wanted to be able to look at the Israelites and have them be fully dependent on the only one who can satisfy them, the only one that in this world that we can depend on, that's God. And as humans, we know that this action is a lot easier said than done, because we have this control freak mentality where we need to take control of our lives. We need to make answers happen. We need to make solutions happen quickly, fast. That's just our human mentality. But the sooner that you let God just do His thing and trust in His process, it's so much sooner that we will find peace within not only ourselves, but life around us, the community around us, the people around us, our job situation, our family situation. When you learn to just trust in His promises, and when you trust His process, that is so much faster that we will just learn His peace. And we all have our own plagues, right? We have, whether they be reoccurring or once problems in our workplace, in our family, in our schools, or maybe even all of the above. Realize that it's not to test how well you can work yourself out of this situation, but it's so that you can understand that you are capable of walking through any plague, any situation, if you have His grace by your side. You can walk through any plague, any situation, if you have Him by your side. And that's what it takes to just go through life. And the second point is to be filled in Him. And not only is it important to trust in His process and just kind of wait there, but it's also important to be in this situation, and while you're trusting in His process and you're in His presence, to be filled with Him and only Him. And the thing that I love about Hannah is that when she had just felt the most empty and the most barren in her life, she didn't just take her bitterness or her anger out on people around her. She came to her breaking point, and then she went to the presence of God. And that exact, the transition from going from, I really feel really empty, she went directly to the presence of God, and that's something that we can really learn from her. And she came before God with a heart that was so yielding to what God had to say. She didn't just, She didn't just come before him and say, God, I need a solution, I need a solution, I need a solution. She just wept in front of him, and God knew exactly why she was in her tears, why she was grieving. And she allowed herself to be so open, to be filled in him. And I sometimes wonder, like, if Hannah had known that the Lord purposely closed her womb, like, would she feel betrayed? Would she feel hurt by God? And then I think about us, and I wonder if God had revealed every single door that he's closed in the past and shut down for our bettering, but if he had told us in that moment when that door was being shut, like, look, I'm going to shut this door for you, I wonder if we would have that same faith. I wonder if we would look at our faith and look at our life and say, you know what, I'm still going to be strong. And the truth is, probably not, because we're humans. And when doors get shut that we don't expect, it can bring us down, and it can bring our faith down. You know? And the thing with Hannah is that she had to be fully emptied. Fully, every single part of her had to be emptied in order for the Lord to fill her up again. And that's the thing. Sometimes, God will want to fill us with the right things, but he first has to empty us of everything that is not supposed to be there, and everything that is not fruitful to our growth. And sometimes this process has been painful. Sometimes it's painful, because sometimes things will be taken from us that we thought were good and we thought were perfect and suitable for our lives, but it'll be taken away, and we'll think, you know what, that's just because I did something wrong, or because Satan's trying to test me. It's because the Lord removed it for a reason. And I remember when I was in 8th grade and we were all getting ready to go to high school, I was zoned to a completely different school than all my other friends. And so all my friends basically left me, and I had to go to this new school. And I remember, like, that summer I made my mom do, like, a ton of paperwork to try to get me to transfer to that school. And then things didn't work out. And then freshman year passed, and then sophomore year came. The summer of freshman year came. And then I told my parents to do that paperwork one more time, because I needed to go to that school. I needed to be with my friends. And then lo and behold, we decided to move to Texas. So it's like, I didn't even get to go to the school that I wanted. I had to be at a school that I didn't even want to be for a whole year. And now I'm moving to another school halfway across the country, and I didn't really know anyone here, so I was like, you know what, this is really great. I was really bitter for a really long time. But now that I'm looking back, me being taken away from that situation, from that city, from those schools, was quite possibly the biggest blessing I've ever had in my entire life. In that situation, was I able to say that it was a blessing? Absolutely not. I was not able to look at my life and say that everything was perfect and everything was peachy keen. I had to come to this perspective 3 or 4 years down the road and look back and say, you know what, now that I look at it, everything worked out for a reason. Everything, I wished, obviously, at that point that I had trusted in his process more, but now that I'm here, I look back and I think, you know what? God did every single thing for a reason. He plans every single account. He plans every single detail of our lives for our bettering. He doesn't do this just to make himself look so great, but he does this because he just cares for us so much that it hurts him when we hurt. And through this process, I grew in Christ. All these things happened. And so for Hannah, I'm sure that infertility is one of the most painful things a woman has to go through, especially in the culture that she grew up in, where women having children was basically how they found their value. Like, for Hannah to go through all of that, it was not easy. But through this longing and this waiting, that is exactly when she came to her utmost surrendering. That is when she could come before the Lord and fully just surrender to him. And it was to a point where she was surrendering so much that Eli came, and Eli thought that she was like drunk, because she was just, that was just the extent of how much she was just pouring her heart out to the Lord. And that was when the Lord looked at Hannah and thought, you know what? Now she is ready for a child. She is ready for not only a child, but she has a heart that is so devoted to God and so devoted to his plans that she would allow Samuel to be in his house and studying with Eli. And that's the kind of surrendering that she really wants. And she's finally gotten to a point where she had relied on the faithfulness of God rather than anything that she could get from the world. She had everything. She had Elkanah's love, she had his support, everything. But she still found that not enough for her, and she still ventured out and pursued God with all her heart. So just to conclude, sometimes we may be in the situation where the Israelites have been, where we need to be reminded just time and time again that closed doors meant more grace and the more goodness of our God. And sometimes we're at where Hannah is, at a point of emptiness or barrenness, where we need God to just take away certain things in our lives in order to strip us and fill us with the right things so that we can move on and know that He's a good God and a righteous God, just like how we sing today. So no matter where we are, I really pray that all of us look at our lives and we say, you know what, Lord, I'm coming to you, and I'm completely open and ready for like all the ways that you're just going to lead me. And whatever storm, whatever battle comes our way, whatever plague comes our way, that we could just look at our lives and say, you know what, God has given me the grace, He has given me the resurrection power, He has given me every single thing that I could ever need in my life to walk through these things and fully depend on His name. Thank you.